With the U20 World Cup on the horizon and the reveal of the new generation World 11 all gathering to compete, many have been interested in the appearance of one specific character, that player being Sai Itoshi. With Sai's last appearance being during the Blue Lock vs Japan Under-20 match, assuming you don't count the flashback with Rain in the PXG game, many are wondering how Sai will actually return to us in the story. I mean, Ego refused to allow Nagi to rejoin the starting lineup, but he also states verbatim that the 23 players that he has chosen can win the World Cup alone. So then, what exactly does that mean for Sai Itoshi and his future story involvement? Well, in today's video, I'll not only be giving you my theory as to how Sai relates to the next upcoming arc, but also how his appearances will lead to his future development in the story and the story itself. Now, I want to preface this by saying that this video is simply just a theory and is not meant to be taken as 100% fact. In the future, if I am eventually proven wrong, then there's nothing I can do about that. But I do hope you enjoy the video nonetheless. Before I get into the video, I want to leave a spoiler warning for the latest chapters of the Blue Lock manga, and if you are not caught up to at least chapter 303, I would suggest you click off this video now if you wish to not be spoiled. I also have a Discord server called the Neo Egoist Geeks, which you should totally join. The link to that is down below. Now, to kickstart this theory, we should start by addressing the elephant in the room. How will Sai return in the story? Well, that's a pretty easy question to answer, but there are a lot of holes that follow. Sai will, very likely, return to us in the series during the U20 World Cup. With Henri's dialogue mentioning how the new generation World 11 have all been gathered to participate during the U20 World Cup, it's safe to say that every new generation 11, known or not, will be appearing there. And with visual appearances from Kaiser and Loki on the same panel, as well as Lorenzo being name dropped by the reporters, it's safe to conclude that they will all be appearing. Well, obviously Loki is not a new generation 11, so he doesn't count, but I hope you understand my point. But from that lone answer, a lot of other questions arise. Does that mean that Sai will be playing for Japan in the U20 World Cup? And will we finally get the team up of Sai, Itoshi, and Yoichi Isagi that people had been desperately waiting for? Well, the answer to both questions is the same. No. Now just hear me out. I know what you're thinking, but trust me. I don't think Sai will be returning to play for Japan in the U20 World Cup for a number of reasons. The core one being that he simply can't. When Baratsuda is asking Ego to bring back Nagi, he doesn't specify to increase the number of slots for the U20 team, making it 24 instead of 23. He instead says to redo the selection events. Now, considering Baratsuda specifies that he was able to relocate the World Cup hosting countries to Japan in less than 50 days of the event actually happening, that would imply that he has substantial amounts of power with FIFA. So the fact that he asked Ego to simply redo the selection events instead of just telling him to bring Nagi back thanks to an expansion of the team registration seems a little bit odd. But also, the 23 player cap has been a staple of the series. Going all the way back to the last time that Sai was seen during the Blue Lock vs Japan Under-20 game, Ego reveals the bench players for the Blue Lock 11, where we can see that there are 12 bench players, giving us a total of 23 if you include the starting 11. Now, assuming that 23 players was not the limit, why not add more players to your bench? I mean, if Ikagiri can make the bench, obviously another character could as well. So the running idea seems to track. That 23 players is the max registration limit for the U20 World Cup, and there are no exceptions. So by that logic, Sai cannot play for Japan simply because there aren't enough spots available for him to do so. My second point is just simple narrative development. Within the NEL, Hiyori was built up as a character who wants to create the greatest striker through his passes and playmaking. And when you compare dialogue, actions, and remarks of Hiyori to Sai, they are nearly identical. Sendo compares Hiyori's passes in the U20 game to Sai's in relation to trajectory and curve. Yukimiya labeled Hiyori's ego and dialogue as sounding like Sai Itoshi, and many people relate Sai's plays to having metavision, such as Isagi, which we know Hiyori to possess as well. So when you look at Sai and Hiyori together, they are essentially the same character when it relates to their skills and playstyle, the only core difference being that Sai is superior to Hiyori. And if Sai were to return, what purpose would that leave for Hiyori? Like, if Sai can do everything that Hiyori can do, but better, Hiyori's purpose would be to act as a mediocre version of Sai on the pitch. It would be more logical to place someone else over Hiyori during the game, as Sai can cover Hiyori's strengths while highlighting another player on offense if Hiyori were to be replaced with someone else. And I've heard a lot of cases saying that Hiyori and Sai could share the pitch at the same time, strengthening the midfield, but I'm not so sure that's a very viable option. Within this series, Blue Lock has always prioritized offensive strength over team balance. The second selection and U20 game are key examples of this. Rather than bring a player on to balance out the team, picking a player to boost their offensive ability is usually the go-to when it relates to the Blue Lock philosophy. So I can't see Sai playing for that reason either. People also like to bring up the dialogue of the mangaka saying how Sai and Isagi would team up as evidence for Sai playing for Japan in the U20 World Cup, but the more you think about it, it really isn't that strong of an argument. While the statement of Sai and Isagi teaming up is actually true and was stated by the mangaka, there was no specification as to how or when this team up would actually take place. So what exactly makes you think that that team up would happen now as opposed to later in the series? And also, who is to say that they would actually play together? If Rain envisioned a reality of Sai and Isagi playing together, would that not in fact be them on a team? While it wouldn't be actual reality, they would be technically playing with each other. While it wouldn't be actual reality, they would technically be playing alongside each other. We've seen visions like this happen before, with Burū in the second selection envisioning Isagi in the U20 World Cup while he was an alcoholic at home. So if there's no timeline or specification as to their team up, you can't really use that as justifiable evidence. So if Sai isn't playing for Japan, but he's still participating in the U20 World Cup, how is he being involved in the next arc? Well, that's because Sai Itoshi will actually be representing Spain. Now this is where a lot of people get lost, so just hear me out and let me explain. Having Sai represent Spain not only makes sense story-wise for Blue Lock as a whole, but makes sense for Sai's character. Going back as far as his introduction, Sai has been actively opposed to representing Japan, only doing so at the youth level against Blue Lock themselves. And despite losing to them and stating how Japan could change with Isagi's involvement, I don't think that he would be involving himself with Japan just yet. With Sai playing at Real, it's likely that he would choose to represent Spain, as Spain is more prominently known for its football over Japan. And with Sai being signed over there, it seems more reasonable to say that he would represent the country that Real is in over anywhere else. Well, now you're probably asking, how would Sai even play for Spain? Well, in order for Sai to represent Spain in the U20 World Cup, there are some conditions that need to be met. For representing Spain at the youth level, which does include the U20 World Cup, Sai would need to be residing in Spain for a minimum of 5 years, but also play for a Spanish club, which if you don't know, Sai meets both of those requirements. Sai, like I mentioned before, is currently signed to Real, a Spanish club, and is also the strongest club in the world. But to address the second point, Sai has in fact been living in Spain for around 5 years. If you look at the dates and ages mentioned in the story, as well as the episode Rain one-shot which is canon to the main story, and you leave a little space of wiggle room for speculation, Sai does meet the requirements of residing in Spain for around 5 years. You could also consider the education clause, which allows for a player to represent another nationality, assuming they were educated within that nation for 5 years. And if Sai went and resided in Spain for 5 years, which we know he did, it's likely that he was educated during his time there. Now I know that some people like to try and argue that we don't know if Sai was 100% educated while in Spain. However, with Kaneshiro's highlight of the Blue Lockers learning English and showing the importance of education in the soccer world prior to the third selection, it would stand to reason that Sai would also be educated as well. So when it relates to Sai, he does meet the requirements to represent Spain at the youth level in the U20 World Cup, and it also makes sense for him to do that, assuming that Henri is correct about every single new generation 11 participating in the U20 World Cup. So with Sai representing Spain, what does this mean for the Blue Lock team going into the U20 World Cup? Will Sai be facing off against Blue Lock for a rematch? Before I get into the rest of the theory, I want to remind you guys that if you are enjoying this video so far, to leave a like and subscribe down below to see more awesome Blue Lock content just like this. It costs you guys absolutely nothing, and it helps me out immensely. And if you want to help me even more, if you were to become a member of the channel, you would not only earn some awesome benefits like personal video requests and shoutouts and videos, but you would also get your name mentioned in the Blue Lock New World movie as a contributor to the project. And this also applies to leaving super chats. So like, subscribe, and become a member to show your support for me and my content. Going into the U20 World Cup, despite Sai not representing Japan, I don't actually think he would face off against them either. I think if Sai had to face off against Japan again, no result would be different than the time in the U20 game. It would just be Rain versus Sai over again, except this time, Rain would likely force Sai to try and yet still win. A lot of people are also speculating on a Spanish New Generation 11 given the flags in chapter 303. But even then, I'm not so sure I would want Sai to face off against Japan, even if he had another New Gen 11 backing him. Instead, I would rather Sai face off against France, playing Loki and Charles in the first round of the World Cup knockout. From his Japan Under-20 game performance and the recent scaling with Sai's Phantom in the PXG game, as well as Loki's reputation and absolute obliteration of Bastion München in the same game, we obviously know how powerful both of these characters are. And I feel like rather than just playing Japan again, having Sai face off against Loki would not only be good for his development, but for the development of the story. Assuming there is a Spanish New Generation 11 with Sai, having Sai play with them and take him to greater heights, while also playing against Loki, whose intention was to do the same thing to Charles, could be a very interesting dynamic. And I don't know about you, but I would want Sai to get fucking obliterated by Loki. Having Loki demolish a player who we have been waiting to see from for years since his U20 debut only to get decimated by the next main antagonist in the story would be so hyped to see. Maybe Sai's performance could also inspire Charles in a way, as they are both incredibly skilled and tactical midfielders. But why exactly would I want for Sai to lose? Well, that's because Sai losing would be the incentive for him to return and represent Japan. With Sai losing to France, that country in Loki and Charles had become opponents that not even he can defeat. However, I do believe that Japan would eventually face off against them and defeat the monster duo. I'm not exactly sure as to how they would do this, maybe with a chemical reaction between Karasu and Hiyori to stop Charles, and one with Chigiri and Zantatsu to pressure Loki's sprinting lanes could be an option, but I still don't have a full idea as to how they could win. But that's irrelevant because I do believe that they would defeat Loki somehow. And with Japan winning over Loki, Japan now having defeated an opponent that not even Sai himself could, even when together with a group of players that he considered to be superior to the country that he was born in, it would result in the constant ridicule of his country being eliminated, as Japanese soccer has now been revolutionized and reached a level to where Sai would respect playing for them. And it's also important to note that I believe the matchup of Japan versus France would happen in the semi-finals of the U20 World Cup. And going into the finals, I'm predicting that Japan would lose to Kaiser and Ness, as well as other players representing Germany. I know it's a little bit far-fetched to say that Kaiser would be the one to defeat Japan, considering that they just defeated Loki, a player who gapped both Kaiser and Isagi earlier in the story, but I think with Ness now awakened and wanting to make Kaiser stronger, that their chemical reaction together along with the performances from the other German players could lead to him defeating Japan. And with Japan losing, they would return with a loss, unable to achieve victory in the U20 World Cup. So to everyone who was watching that interview, Isagi is a fucking liar. But anyways, after the U20 World Cup, I'm predicting that there would be an arc prior to the main World Cup that would allow for the Blue Lockers and other U20 players to develop at the club level. And that arc would cover the Champions League. Since Sai's dream is to win the Champions League, it would seem foolish not to cover it to some degree in the series. And during this arc, I believe that the focus would shift narratively from Isagi to instead focus on Sai, Rin, and Kaiser at Real as they play through the Champions League. I think that this is definitely needed, as Sai could consider himself potentially unworthy of representing Japan, as they have now done something that not even he could do and would need to get stronger in order to represent his country on the world stage. And by achieving his dream of winning the Champions League, we could hope for a Sai evolution. But also by playing alongside Kaiser, the man who just defeated Japan in the U20 World Cup, Sai can hope to evolve himself by playing alongside a striker of a superior caliber, someone beyond Shido, Isagi, or Rin. And it's funny that I mentioned Rin because I did say earlier that Rin would be a central focus of the Champions League arc. I think it'd let the brothers handle their issues with each other and allow for that chemistry to settle itself out, as to not cause any issues going into later arcs. Because I'm gonna be honest, if I have to deal with Rin being all pissy at Sai for the rest of the series, I don't know if I can handle that. This would also allow us to explore Sai's backstory of what happened in Spain, allowing for us to cover what has already been speculated on for so long. And obviously, I believe that Sai, Rin, and Kaiser would win the Champions League representing Real, allowing for Sai to achieve his dream. And with his dream completed, his issues with Rin being settled, and with him hopefully being awakened thanks to playing alongside Rin and Kaiser, Sai would hopefully return to Japan to represent them in the final World Cup. Now, I'm sure you guys are probably thinking about the Hiyori point that I mentioned earlier, saying how if Sai were to return, it would make Hiyori essentially useless. And while that could be true, I don't think that Hiyori would play a central role in the story anymore. Typically, players are actually called up from their clubs to represent their country at the national level, so players like Sai and Isagi and Rin would be called up, but players like Hiyori would not. Because let's be honest, do you see the top 23 players we have now going into the final World Cup? Because I really can't see characters like Nanase or Sendo being key players in taking down Noel Noah. However, I do see players in Sai, Rin, and Isagi being the ones to do that. So with Sai finally achieving his dream and Japan having revolutionized its country's football, he would return to represent Japan and help Yoichi Isagi defeat Noel Noah in the final World Cup. And that's simply my theory as to how Sai's performance in the U20 World Cup will impact the rest of Blue Lock as we know it. There are definitely some areas I need to work out for this theory, but I do believe that it has some merit to it. But anyways, I hope you guys did enjoy this video and will continue to enjoy in the future. I also want to say thank you so much to all the members of the channel who help support me and my content. And if you wish to earn some awesome benefits like they do, and even get your name mentioned in the Blue Lock New World movie, become a member yourself and help support me moving forward. And just a final reminder to join my Discord server if you're ever interested in getting any more involved with our amazing community. As for the question of the video though, who do you think Sai will play for in the U20 World Cup? Leave me your thoughts down below in the comment section. And like always, thank you all for watching, like and subscribe to see more awesome Blue Lock content just like this.